Madam Chair. It's a delight for me to introduce to you, if you don't already know, Dora Rose. She is our LWVC Deputy Director for the League of Women Voters, and she is pretty much an amazing person. I've had a great opportunity to work with her over the past 4 years. And if Justin Levitt was inspiring, I think you will find Dora equally inspiring. She has always kept me very focused on the kind of work we're doing. And she is very focused on serving as our lobbyist in Sacramento. She walks those halls. I think of her as a fierce bulldog on behalf of the league. Her advocacy works focuses on driving impact, and she talks a lot about impact through legislation and ballot measures. In California, she focuses on these goals: closing the voter participation gap to ensure that people of color have the access and the tools to wield their power through voting. She's also very focused on building more representative democracy that better serves all of California's diverse residents. She has been a civil rights litigator, a policy advocate, and voting rights activist for over 30 years. This is something that is very deeply ingrained in who Dora Rose is all about. She comes to us having been doing a lot of voter rights work in Ohio, and she was with the Voting Rights Institute and the Center for Election Integrity at Cleveland State University. She's also been a cooperating attorney with ACLU of California, and she has an attorney that has passed the bar not only in California, but as well as Ohio and Pennsylvania. She is, as I said, just a wonderful, wonderful staff person who has been doing amazing work in Sacramento. Dora?
Thank you, Gloria. And it's just me, Savannah, so I don't need any slides because I want to be able to talk directly to folks. So if it's possible to take that welcome slide down, that would be great. That now I feel like I'm really looking folks in the eye, proverbially. A few short weeks ago, the President of the United States deployed 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to the streets of Los Angeles. Not to respond to a natural disaster, not to assist with recovery efforts, right? But to suppress Americans exercising their First Amendment right to protest immigration raids that are tearing families apart. Military troops on American soil against American protesters. Let that sink in. Good afternoon. It's an honor to stand before you at this moment of unprecedented crisis for California, for our nation, and for the future of democratic self-government. Right now, we're witnessing what we're seeing in LA. It's not isolated, right? It's the predictable escalation of an assault on democracy that has been building for years. When you systematically erode voting rights, when you silence dissent, when you demonize entire communities, this is where it leads to soldiers in our streets. So, here's what we're up against. The foundations of American democracy are under attack, not in the abstract, right? Not someday, but now, today, with military force deployed against civilians in our own backyard. We are witnessing a full-scale effort to erode the very principles that have guided this country for over 2 centuries. One person, one vote, right? Equal justice under the law. Government by and for the people. Think about the civil rights heroes who faced down police dogs and fire hoses, the suffragists who endured imprisonment and violence for our right to vote. Their courage and their sacrifice are being trampled by federal troops in Los Angeles. And just last week, we saw how far this administration will go. Senator Alex Padilla, California's first Latino senator, a man who has dedicated his life to public service, was forced to his knees, thrown to the ground, handcuffed by federal agents. All for asking a question about immigration enforcement affecting his constituents at a press conference in a federal building where he had every right to be. And then came the lies, right? They accused this distinguished public servant of lunging at the podium like a dangerous animal, using dehumanizing language that has been historically used to justify violence against people of color. This is the racist playbook we've seen for generations. You criminalize, dehumanize, and then brutalize. As Senator Padilla pointed out himself, if they'll do this to a U.S. senator in broad daylight, right, on camera, in front of reporters, what are they doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers when no one is watching? Across the country, extremists are working to consolidate power by restricting who can vote and whose vote counts. They are stoking fear, they are spreading lies, they are laying the groundwork to sabotage future elections. They're banning books, dismantling rights, and deploying military force against those who dare to resist. So, let's be absolutely clear. This isn't public politics as usual, right? This is authoritarianism in action. This is a coordinated strategy to roll back the progress that we've made toward inclusion, equality, and a multiracial democracy, and it is happening with shocking speed. But we are not powerless here. We are the counterweight. We are the resistance. We're the League of Women Voters of California, and we will not be intimidated. This is exactly why our work matters more than ever. Every barrier that we remove, every right that we protect, every voice we amplify strengthens democracy against the forces trying to destroy it. Over the past year, our advocacy has embodied the kind of democracy that we believe in: inclusive, equitable, and fiercely participatory. And now in this moment of crisis, that work becomes our bulwark against tyranny. We fought to restore voting rights for people in prison through ACA 4, building on the historic win of Prop 17 that restored voting rights to people on probation and on parole. Now, ACA 4 didn't pass. What happened? So we pivoted. We fought for in-person voting access in county jails because in California, thousands of people in jail retain the right to vote, but are systematically denied the opportunity. When that bill was vetoed, we didn't give up. So this year, we're backing a bill to remove staples. Yes, yeah, staples from voter guides so they can be distributed in jails where, staples are considered a security risk. Just take a moment and imagine someone who overcame countless barriers finally receives their ballot in jail, but they're denied the voter information guide that would tell them about the candidates and the issues that they need to know about. That is the kind of barrier, seemingly small and mundane, but absolutely crushing, that stands between some Americans and their fundamental right to vote. We have defended the Voters' Choice Act against legislation that would have gutted outreach. We continue to lead the call for state funding to close our persistent voter participation gaps because California still has two electorates. In some communities, 80% turn out to vote, right? In others, it's barely 60%. That is not democracy. That is selective representation. It's also why we launched a new primary reform bill so that decisions about our sheriffs and our schools and our supervisors, those decisions happen when most people are actually voting in the November general election. That is a current bill that we are sponsoring. And it's also why we're working to lift California's outdated ban on public campaign financing so that local governments can build fair, more inclusive elections, right? So that money doesn't drown out voices, so that our elected leaders are accountable to people and not megadonors. And it is also why we are the sole sponsors of the resolution to rescind California's past calls for a constitutional convention under Article 5. Because honestly, in this political climate, calling a federal convention that has no guardrails and no rules built into it, it's like handing a match to an arsonist and asking them to reimagine the fire code. We've stood for racial justice because you can't have a real democracy without it. So the League, as you've heard previous people talk about, we co-sponsored the Racial Justice Act, giving people a legal right to challenge their sentences when bias taints their prosecution. And actually, let me back up a moment and tell you what League volunteers accomplished under the Racial Justice Act in Alameda County. When Black and Jewish residents were systematically excluded from juries, which was happening there, our volunteers didn't look away. They organized, they partnered with legal advocates, and they fought back. And they helped save 3 people from death row. I mean, think about that. This organization helped save 3 lives. That's what happens when the League shows up, right? When we act, not just as policy advocates, but as protectors of human dignity, right? And defenders of the common good. We've also stood with immigrant communities under attack. You've heard a little bit about that. We opposed AB 85, which would have rolled back California's sanctuary protections and forced local police to become immigration enforcers. We understand that when you make communities afraid to call police, when you turn local law enforcement into deportation agents, you don't make anyone safer, right? You make everyone more vulnerable. The federal raids that are happening across California right now, the fear that is rippling through our communities, this is what happens when we fail to protect the most vulnerable among us. Today, it's immigrants. It's more than immigrants. It's already not just immigrants. It's also U.S. citizens. I was going to say tomorrow could be anyone who dares to dissent. It's already anyone who dares to dissent. So, friends, none of this is theoretical anymore, right? Here in California, we have seen bills that are straight from the Project 2025 playbook meant to roll back our progress. Important progress that we have made on making elections more accessible. Bills to end universal vote by mail. Bills to repeal the Voters' Choice Act, to require strict voter ID, right? To demand documentary proof of citizenship, and to reject ballots that are not received by Election Day, even if they're mailed on time. We have worked to kill every one of them. So when Congressman Darrell Issa, excuse me, shouldn't mispronounce his name the way Senator Padilla's name has been mangled. When Congressman Darrell Issa filed a federal lawsuit to block the counting of mail ballots received after Election Day, despite California law allowing up to 7 days for ballots to arrive, we filed and we won the right to intervene. Because protecting voters is not optional. It's who we are. Now we face something that is far more dangerous even than that. An administration that deploys soldiers against civilians who are exercising their constitutional rights. An administration that has forgotten the difference between governing and occupying. This is why the stakes couldn't be higher. We are in a fight for the soul of this country, not just over voting rights, but over whether America will remain a democracy or descend into authoritarianism, over whether we'll be a nation governed by law or ruled by force. So what's happening in LA is a warning. It's a preview of what's coming if we don't stand up, speak out, and fight back. Authoritarians count on exhaustion. You all know this, right? They count on fear. They count on good people being too intimidated to act. But we don't intimidate, right? We organize, we educate, we advocate, we persist. That's the League of Women Voters. That's you. So I'd like you all to just take a moment and think about why you're here. What brought you to this fight? Whatever that reason is, it is more urgent today than it was yesterday, because your grassroots leadership and volunteerism powers this work. Your financial support makes it possible. Your voice carries our mission. And your presence here right now proves that democracy is not just worth saving, it's worth actively defending against those who would destroy it. When they deploy troops, we deploy voters. When they spread fear, we spread truth. When they divide communities, we build coalitions that work together. So, here's what victory looks like. Every eligible American votes. Every vote counts. Every voice matters. Elections decided by citizens, not intimidation. Justice that is truly equal. And democracy that's truly inclusive. Communities, where people can protest, organize, and speak truth to power without fear of military force. That is the America we're building. That's the California we're defending. And that is the future that we're fighting for. So let's keep going. Let's fight harder than ever. And let's remind this state and this nation that the League is here, the League is ready, and the League will not be silenced. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora, and I'm sure that we have questions.
There aren't questions in the Q&As. There are simply lots of thank yous and you go girl kinds of comments, Dora. So,
well, see, that's the problem with virtual conventions. As convenient as they are, the group can't get up to its feet and cheer.
But people are saying they're standing and clapping.
They're standing and clapping. So everyone's, stand and clap.
This is what we do. We are the League. You can always follow up later. We are always here.
So there are some raised hands, and I think should we have Sharon call on the raised hands?
Sure, I can do that. Elizabeth, you can unmute.
I'm not hearing anything.
I think that was calling on me, and I did not intend to raise my hand other than to say, wow, can we use the speech you just gave and make it available to our League members? Because I think it would be very inspiring for them to see. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, you can unmute.
Thank you. Are the protests effective? Is there something more we could be doing?
Yes and yes. The protests are effective. You heard Justin talk about that. I think it's absolutely right. It's sort of become a common refrain. You may feel like you're just going out again and speaking to the void, but the protests are very effective because they really empower decision makers, even ones that are on our side, to fight even harder. They need, Alex Padilla needs to be able to say, this many constituents have been in touch with me. This many constituents in my jurisdiction came out to march in opposition to this. It absolutely has a very salutary effect. And what does it say if we say nothing at all, if we don't get out there, if we don't make that statement? There are also many other things that you can do at the local level. I spoke about this a little bit, but California really does have a problem. We're a majority minority state, where there's a significant gap in voter participation and among youth and voters of color compared to our older white non-Hispanic population. So, what that means is that decisions about critical issues of local and statewide importance are being made by a predominantly older white and profoundly underrepresented electorate. In your communities, you can work with your local leagues and other community organizations that represent more impacted people to try to engage people more in the process, to engage them at the local level in the process as they get involved in local government, right? And to engage them in getting out the vote. And getting out the vote can be done in a nonpartisan way. You can walk the streets and knock on doors carrying the Easy Voter Guide to help people understand basic information about how to access the mechanisms of voting, and non-partisan information about ballot measures so they know more about it. Because actually, one really important thing to recognize is that sometimes people don't vote, and this is, there have been studies that show this, simply because they don't feel that they know enough about the issues to cast a ballot knowledgeably. So getting out there in your communities, educating people, encouraging people, helping folks connect the act of voting to how their lives will actually fundamentally improve, how representation, making sure that they are represented, especially, even at the local government level, will have a actual practical impact on the everyday concerns of their lives. So there's plenty that folks can do. Marching is important, but there's other ways for you to build democracy at the local level. And always listen out for our action alerts, because when we need folks to step up and get in touch with their legislators for a state matter, that's really an important way of driving somebody's vote.
Thank you.
Dora, can we just add one more thing, that it's important to say to our legislators periodic thank yous. So if you have a legislator that you think is voting the right way all the time, at least every other action alert, make that you can change the message and just be thank you for your support.
Yeah. These folks need encouragement. They get discouraged too.
There are no other hands.
All right.
Okay, well, as I said, our speaker, our lobbyist and policy director, is always a highlight of the convention, and it certainly has been a highlight this time. Thank you, Dora.